Hi, welcome to this week's Journal Club. I am Mike. I will be your host today. I am a second year PhD student from NOW's lab in Monash. Anson.
Yep. So I'm Anson. I'm from the same lab as Bike in Monash. I'm hoping to start PhD soon, and yeah, interested to talk about the paper further.
Yeah,
And
and my name is
maybe you,
Chuyin.
yep.
Sorry, my name is Chuyin, and I'm a PhD student from the same lab. Yeah, and
Yeah,
Lipeng.
I'm Lipeng. I'm also the first year PhD student in the same lab.
All right, great. Today we are actually talking about the result of the adversarial collaboration between IIT and the Global Workspace theory. So in one of the previous journal club, we talked about the protocols and the hypothesis in much more detail. We will briefly review the hypotheses and the methods of the experiment, but we'll mainly be focusing on the result today. So let's start. Well, there are three hypotheses for IIT as well as the Global Workspace series. The IIT believe that it's the posterior area of the brain that's responsible for consciousness, while the Global Workspace theory believe that the prefrontal cortex is what truly matters. And therefore, one should be able to decode conscious content from, well, if you believe in IIT, from the posterior, if you believe in global workspace, from the prefrontal area. The second hypothesis is the temporal dynamic of neuroactivity correlated with conscious experience. The global workspace theory, they talks about ignitions for the global workspace. So they would argue that there should be a spike in activities during the onset of certain experience or stimuli, and there will be another spike when the stimuli is offset. So two spikes, and there will be a big dip in the middle. IT, on the other hand, argue that there will be a sustained activities in the posterior area throughout the experience. So it will be a spike in the initial onset and then maintained until the offset of the stimuli. And at the end, the last hypothesis is the interareal connectivities. So the global workspace theory, once again, it's called global workspace. So the prefrontal area is supposedly connected to all the other areas of the brain. Therefore, we are expecting these long-range synchronicities between the prefrontal areas and like the posterior visual areas. For the IIT, on the other hand, they are expecting much more short-range connectivity within the V1 and V2 and more category-specific area, all located in the posterior. So that's the three hypotheses. Methodology-wise, they are showing participants stimuli, rather a sequence of stimuli, and ask them to respond when they see the target stimuli. So some of the attributes of the task that matters are categories. So there may be a face stimuli, or there may be an object stimuli, and the participants is asked to select the ones that they have been shown before and disregard the ones that are not shown, be it from a different category, like from a different, well, maybe letters and false letters, or from the same category but are not specified previously. If you want to have a look at the exact methodology, they have a video attached to the article. You are encouraged to have a look. There's also the orientation of the stimuli, which never matters, but will become important. Sorry, never matters to the participant. But for the researcher's perspective, it's actually quite important. We'll be talking more about it when we are looking at the result itself. So first of all, the areas of decoding. Once again, IIT, posterior, global workspace, frontal, prefrontal. It turns out that for the category, both the prefrontal and the posterior can be used to decode the categories, which is good. Now, one thing that worth mentioning is that the task relevancy should not matter. No. Why? Well, because we are only interested in the conscious experience. We're not interested in attention, expectancy, cognitive processing. Doesn't matter, right? If the participant's seen it, be it task relevant or task irrelevant, we should be able to decode it from the areas. Turns out, category, both areas can be used to decode it. Orientation, on the other hand, only the posterior can be used to decode it. So it fits the IIT better than the global workspace. That's good for IIT. We move on to the temporal dynamic. So whether the activity is sustained or not. So it turns out global workspace theory have faced some major issue here. Largely because they only observe the onset spike of activities, but not the offset one. Now, both are important for global workspace, so that's a major problem. IIT, on the other hand, did not really pass through the test unscathed because it turns out that the orientation is not maintained for IIT. The category, its activities maintained throughout. Orientation, no. Which raised some interesting questions on how IoT theorists can explain such a mixed result. Although I suppose one could argue that it still looks better than the global workspace theory and its hypotheses. But let's move on. We will call it a draw between the two. We move into the interareal connectivity hypotheses. So in this case, IIT suffers quite a bit, largely because no sustained gamma band synchronicity was found in V1, V2, and category-specific area. So IITs are expecting sustained synchronicity, yet no sustained synchronicity was found. Okay. On the other hand, for the global workspace areas, they actually found pretty positive result. There has been good connections between the prefrontal areas and the category selective areas. So that's a pretty big win for global workspace. One thing to be cautious about is that both theory actually failed in this criteria when used the pre-registered analysis method. So how to interpret this result, we'll leave it to the viewers. But in general, we would say that global workspace won this criteria. So at the end, if we overview the three hypotheses, well, the results are rather mixed, right? It seems to be mostly a draw. I guess you could argue it slightly favors IIT, but there's no clear winner in this experiment. And that's roughly it. I wasn't able to look into some of the details of the graph, so I personally don't understand a lot of it. I'm expecting other people can perhaps elucidate it on my behalf. And that's it.
Thank you.
Any questions or things to discuss? Or are we just happy with the result?
I do have a question, but it may be technical, and it also may be because I miss some technical details because the method is just too long. So for the third criteria or prediction, I don't really get what this what is called, let me see, synchronization actually means in practice. Yeah.
Now, maybe people have a better answer than me, but my very shallow knowledge about it is just when one area lights up, the other area lights up soon after.
So it's like the neural activity. It's like the neurons get active simultaneously. So that's the answer?
Yeah, I would assume so. Maybe there's a short delay, but yes, almost simultaneously, the two areas get activated.
For this, are you asking about synchronization or this specific like pairwise phase consistency?
I think synchronization because it more often to I think the more frequently used term it's synchronization. Yeah.
And yes, I would agree with Mike's sake. And also the delay of the activity is definitely don't have a significant influence in the conclusion of synchronization, I think, because there's a metric called grandeur causality. It means that the activation of one neuron may be causing another neuron to active, but not at the same time point, definitely, because
Okay, so this 0.3 seconds, 0.3 to 0.5 seconds for gene update for it's from the delay. It's for the delay, right?
for the window of
Oh, the window. Okay. Yeah, okay, then that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
A comment I want to make for this section is for testing V1 and V2, they only use 12 electron. And for the prefrontal area, they have a 472. That's a big discrepancy.
Okay, and for this prediction, does it imply causal relationship to some extent? Or it's just
Can you elaborate
as
on
you
that?
said, it might be the activity from one region caused the activity in another region. Is that what the study wants to say or wants to imply?
Well, it's functional connectivity, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's essentially saying that, okay, so if prefrontal area and V1, V2 activated almost simultaneously,
Mhm.
they are probably connected in some way.
Yeah, in some way.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and if they are, then seems to fit the the global workspace theory better given the context of the experiment.
So I mean the connectivity doesn't have to be causal, right?
Yes, yes. And
Okay.
imagine like two neuron, they will have a higher level neuron that's active at the same time, and then it convey information to both neuron, and both neuron
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
are not really connected to each other. So
Yeah, and the delay or the time window might be just from the processing time or the speed of neural signals. Yeah.
actual physical distance.
Yeah, physical distance, right. Okay, I see. Yeah, right.
And also I want to comment on this result is the functional connectivity here is like um a network model describes the brain as a set of nodes and edges, right? That represent its organization. But there is a different type of functional connectivity. One type is macro, and another type is macro and micro. Macro means area connection, like two brain region, and then a smaller scale of this macro scale connectivity means connection between neurons. This very small area interconnection. And then in this paper, I think they are talking about regional connectivity, right? Which I think, yeah, I'm not sure whether IIT specifically talk about this connectivity and which scale we should use to measure connectivity. Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I see what you mean because like in IIT especially, like I've only read a few papers or only talked about this like very minimally, but like in animal experiments like in the fly brains that Angus is doing, or say in some other, I think there's like a mouse study that they were doing in Japan, like they were using like single neuron recording and doing that type of comparison, so a very small scale connectivity that they're emphasizing in IIT, and then and in the global network, a global neural network, they are doing it on a very broad scale with like regional connection from the prefrontal tied to the back of the visual areas and so on and so forth. So yeah, I agree with your point.
Yeah, I'm just not sure whether IIT have defined whether we should use neural connectome or functional connectome, like the regional connectome. Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
I think there's probably ways to translate the more stringent requirement in the IT causal structure into something more functional. But I'm not experienced in it enough to to determine whether the translation in this case is good or bad. So
Okay.
This is probably a point that is already made previously when we were talking about the method. But I feel like here when I was like reading the results, it feel a bit more like it sort of reoccurs to me that some of the IIT predictions that are listed here are not necessarily derived from the theory per se, but more so derived as an opposition to the global workspace theory. Let's say something like, for example, the temporal sustained temporal activation. I don't think IIT explicitly say that you need a sustained activity to to sort of have this sort of conscious experience, so long as like you need what they emphasize is like you need the activity itself, but also the connections behind it that is also relevant. And I don't think this is reflected in the hypothesis that is set out here, at the least. And yeah, I don't know what you guys think about it.
I asked Francesco about it specifically, but he couldn't answer me either. So it's I don't know what's going on. I mean, I assume it's for good reasons, but
Now I have a maybe question regarding figure 2. How do you interpret figure 2b?
Figure 2b.
uh
Let's see.
I think the basic idea is they use data and then training a classifier, and then use that classifier to see whether the training data provide enough information for that classifier to accurately classify some neuron. But I have a difficulty to interpret this figure.
I think that the time is time window, right? Using which part of the data can obtain and what extent of accuracy. And
what I don't fully understand about this graph is the y-axis, the training time. I assume they're referring to the training time of the class, or rather the time window used to train the classifier. But what
Point or range of time.
Sorry, maybe I'll just share the graph. It's easier to for everyone to see about.
Yeah. Just let's make this question more simply. If the classifier is 100% accurate, what should the graph be like?
Accurate.
Like
So only the bright red part, is that correct?
yeah. And is that course expanded to whole times range, and then it will be a rectangle of red?
Well, the diagonal has to be at least red, right? That I think we can agree on. The question is whether it spreads out to the whole graph or whether it's just a diagonal.
Posterior prefrontal. Okay.
I have to check on. Yeah, I have to check on.
Yeah, maybe leave this technical issue later. We can discuss about theory.
Yeah.
Yes, I did not read through the 10 pages of method here, unfortunately.
Yeah, I actually don't understand what the testing time is either. Now I think about it. So
Okay.
all right.
I remember in IIT, recent researcher also focus on want to study the experience of time. And Mike, do you feel we can use their data or their data is valuable to test this question?
Can you elaborate on that idea?
Yeah, I mean the experience of time, although they collect data on seeing faces and the object and the pseudo letter, but this is also a time courses, a time series data, a trace, and I don't know whether we can find some data that related to experience of time in here.
I think it's kind of difficult because time experience sort of underlined, much like the spatial experience, sort of underlies all of our other experiences, really. And ideally, I would imagine you want a much purer this idea about what time experiences would be like, separate from what's happening during, or maybe separating from the content of that time period, I guess. Would that make sense?
You mean exclude those kind of stimuli related activity?
So no matter what stimuli are presented, no matter what activity the person is asked to do, we should be able to observe some kind of time experiences. Though I can't be sure if IIT would suggest that such experience is always the same, or would it vary based on what activity you are engaging in or what state you are in. Maybe during flow state, it's different in some way. But yeah, I can't. I'm speaking out of my knowledge there, really.
Thank you.
I'm actually wondering what's people's opinion on the orientation maintenance issue that IIT faces here. Because it's not obvious why that should be the case.
You're talking particularly about section 2?
Yes, that's, yeah.
Okay.
So it's decodable. So we know that, okay, something in the posterior is related to orientation. That's good. And especially orientation is never task relevant. So it's a good showcasing of what the posterior can do, but then it's not maintained. Do we just say that the maintenance hypothesis is not like a good IIT hypothesis, but then, well, the category is maintained. So what's happening here, right? Maybe well, maybe a different question then. Once again, related to orientation. So we know that in global workspace theory, you can actually decode category from the prefrontal area, but they have difficulty with the orientation. So it seems every time orientation has something as a feature, has something special about it, right? I was initially thinking about, because prefrontal area have more relationship with attention and expectation, and orientation is so subtle of a feature, so task irrelevant, it just never shows up in the prefrontal area. That would be my explanation. Do people have other ideas, or?
I will agree with you because it's task irrelevant. It won't be that globally represented. Yeah.
I want to raise a point about mental rotation invariant. Like when I see Mike at the left face and see you at the right face, I know it is you. So my personal experience will be, oh, this is Mike. But I don't know whether there will be a significant difference in
when it's task relevant, it should be. I will guess it should be. But when it's task irrelevant, that would be different to me.
Yeah, but on the point of task relevancy or irrelevancy, like we can look at the plot above about when the face objects are task irrelevant, then the activation is still there, at least in the posterior. And there is still sustained activity in the posterior when I assume this is how I interpret it, that the face object category, when the face stimuli or the object stimuli present when it is not relevant to the task, the posterior still shows sustained activity. So it could be about relevancy, but it could also be more than that as well.
Actually, I think Lipeng raised a very good point, right? I mean, perhaps the frontal area is more related to these higher level experience. When we're talking about experience of a chair, not a specific chair, but a chair in general, maybe prefrontal have something to do with it. And when we're talking about specific features, like how the chair is located or rotated, then we go back to the posterior.
Yeah, it's just intuition. I don't know whether there is a practical evidence about that. Have you ever read something about it? Yeah.
The only thing that was sort of relevant is that it's a projection from the very back occipital lobe out front. Like that's how we are usually taught with neurophysiology in terms of visual processing. But whether that projection extends all the way past the visual processing area to the prefrontal, that may be an extrapolation of that. But there's like the ventral processing stream that is going towards from the back to the front, at least.
I'm also thinking about another thing is mental representation. I remember I learned it from development psychology. I think it is a crucial skill for certain age of children. If they pass it, and then we say, oh, they're I think the capacity of something is
Sorry, you see mental rotation, right?
yeah, mental rotation.
Yeah, that's part of like abstract thinking or something in Piaget's theory, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm not that knowledgeable on this, yeah, but just from my memory of bachelor degree.
Yeah. So if all participants they are all like adults, and then presumably their mental representations develop very well, and then if we see a chair in different orientation, then probably we are experiencing a same chair. But for maybe children, if their orientation change, maybe they will have a different experience, probably. And then maybe it leads to different result.
That would be possible, yeah.
I was almost thinking more about like facial blindness, in the sense that the person can see individual facial features, but they couldn't combine it into a face. So we will have a case where local features can be experienced, but the global ones, when they put together, nah. So maybe, but then fusiform facial area is also like in the posterior, so it's not a good example, I guess.
How many electrodes are on the fusible face area? In this study?
Did it specify? It's just in the posterior.
Yeah, just random question.
Were you concerned that there are too few electrodes? Is that the reason why?
Yeah, one is that. But I'm not so not very expert in IEEG analysis, so I just suspect.
Oh, yeah, I think I forgot to mention this point. There are actually 3 different kind of measurements in this experiment. They have the fMRI, they have the MEG, and they have IEEG, which is quite impressive. Like they have 30 IEEG patients with so many electrodes. Crazy stuff.
Regarding the maintenance, I have it's a very up in the air type of hypothesis. So I've recently heard about something called Troxler effect, where basically if you stare at a stimulus over long periods of time, the stimulus just fades away and disappear. I'll type in the chat if you want to Google it up a little bit. And that sort of echoes this type of, what do they call it, activity, silent activity that was proposed in the global network, global workspace. Let me find the exact word. Sorry, the activity silent state, where basically you have, well, in this case it would be in a Troxler effect, where if you stare at a sort of fixed stimulus over long periods of time, if the stimulus is sort of transient enough or faded enough, then it would just totally disappear. And I'm thinking about this, and in relation to this sort of maintenance idea, could it be that lower levels or low level perception, so things like colors or like contours or like in this case orientations, these are more susceptible to these type of fading effects, so therefore you just wouldn't see this type of activity if it is sustained over long periods of time. But if you have higher levels concepts, for example, like chair, or like in this case they have faces and they have objects, these type of concepts or high level, I don't even have a word for it, but they will persist longer and less susceptible to this effect because of, I don't even know have a good reason for why that would be the case, but it's just a hypothesis. that you have like this sort of low level effects and high level, low level perception, so to speak, and high level perceptions, where the lower ones are more susceptible to this type of fading, or in other words, a sort of change detection type of mechanism, whereas the higher levels are sort of more better maintained, if you understand what I mean.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Mike?
No, you go.
No, I just want to ask for more clarification about low level and high level.
Mhm.
Yeah, do you mean low level is kind of feature and high level like a phase or holistic experience, something?
Yeah, in that sense, yes.
Oh.
It's just an interesting hypothesis.
That is interesting, right? I mean, would the global workspace theory say that when you first see the stimuli, there's a spike, silence, and then when they fade, there's another spike, even though the stimuli is exactly the same? There must be some kind of experiment done on it before, right?
Like, what, in distinguishing between the sort of
Like,
feature detections versus like, yeah, more conceptual, more, yeah, as Lipeng saying, it's more holistic type of perception.
I was thinking about more about the Troxler effect itself and whether there's an onset offset
Let's
neurodynamic.
see. Yeah, that I have not had a look
Ah.
actually.
If that's the case, then maybe we shouldn't dig too much into it because.
Or maybe we'll do another paper on that if I
Oh,
find a paper about that.
maybe we will. Maybe we
Yeah,
will.
yeah.
All right. Any other things to discuss? If not, we can have a short journal club.
Yeah, just that's pretty much for me. And I found it very interesting is they use a PPC, which is pairwise phase consistency measure. And it is a subset or one of the pairwise interaction in PySpark.
Oh.
Yeah, currently I'm using PySpark to do kind of analysis, and I just quickly check. Oh, this is one of them. Interesting. So I am going to see whether another interaction will be useful or can draw a different conclusion to this same data set.
Oh, that would be interesting to see.
Probably we need to have a DOI for this video.
We can if we want to. Yeah, no, I have no idea how the analysis is done, so I can't really provide any comments or suggestion there.
Yeah, it's just a interesting point, a comment. Okay.
We good? All right. If no more questions, then that will be the end for today. Thank you for coming to the Journal Club once again. See you next time where we do a different paper, maybe about Troxler effect, maybe not. We will never know. All right. See ya.
Thank you.